What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for some more content for you guys. We have got Brian Daigle in the house. Big up to you, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, brother. Always a pleasure to see you. I hope you and everyone else is well.
Everyone is well, thank you. I hope everyone is well on your end as well. We're going to be talking about something a little bit different today. We've got two players that I wanted to go through that seem to be on the market this summer. I want to get your opinion, and obviously I'll give my opinion as well. If Spurs should be looking at these two players, and should we be, putting in a bid, trying to get the deals over the line for these two specific players? The first player I'm going to talk about is a player that absolutely shone last night in the semi-final of the Euros, scored a goal, showed some unbelievable ability, unbelievable skill. And you know what? He's been shining throughout the whole Euros. Hasn't been a starter, but every time he has come on, he's been absolutely brilliant. I've always been a massive fan of him, to be honest. The star for RB Leipzig. Every time an international tournament comes around, he seems to shine, and he goes by the name of Dani Olmo. Ryan Taylor says that he understands there is a high likelihood that Dani Olmo's £50 million release clause will be triggered before Monday's deadline. English and Spanish sides are in contention. Chelsea among the clubs to have shown concrete interest. Liverpool currently not planning a move. So for a £50 million release clause, for me, it's an absolute no-brainer. We're talking about an Eberechi Eze for 60, potentially 8 in add-ons as well. So you're talking about 68 million. And I'm looking at Dani Olmo, and I think Dani Olmo is of a similar level, if not better than Eberechi Eze. He can fill in on the wings. He's competent at the number 10 role as well. He knows where the back of the net is. He's so creative. He's like a magician with the ball at his feet. So, I mean, what's your opinion? Do you want to see Spurs look to go in for Dani Olmo? It's a Monday deadline for the release clause.
I echo literally everything you've just said. He is a magnificent football player. I even remember the first game of the season for Leipzig when he played Harry Kane's Bayern Munich for the first game, and he absolutely shone in that game as well. He is a magician with a football. And you look at it, £50 million in today's age for a player of that quality. When we look at the outlay we've just done for Archie Gray, a youngster, for what, £5 million extra, give or take, with Rodon going the other way, it is an absolute no-brainer. He's been on our radar before.
Yeah.
It's not like we haven't been monitoring the situation or anything. I think this is an absolute no-brainer. But I think with the Euros he's having, we won't be the only suitor. He's a wonderful footballer.
Yeah, I mean, the report does say that in terms of English sides, Chelsea are the only ones mentioned. There are suitors in Spain for him as well. And obviously being Spanish, that could be very attractive to him. He's never played in Spain before. He started off at Dinamo Zagreb and then moved over to RB Leipzig. And I remember Spurs being heavily linked with him before he moved to Zagreb before he moved to Leipzig when he was at Zagreb. And I was very excited about the prospect of him there. And he's been a key cog in the RB Leipzig wheel in the past couple of years. And I just think this should be an absolute no-brainer. He would fit in exactly what Postecoglou wants to do. He can press high up the pitch. If I was to give you the choice of an Olmo or an Eze, who would you pick?
Oh, it's so hard because you know my love for Eze from last summer. My love for Eberechi is there. But if you look at it, and I'm going to look at it from Tottenham Hotspur side more than my side, financially, everything points towards Almo, doesn't it? And then you look at it, I don't know what his wages would be. I don't know. But if I look at it the way Tottenham do business, there is a lot more to gain from 50 million with Almo than there is for 68 million for Eze. Apart from Premiership experience, it's a tough one for me to choose because my love for Eze is just paramount. So yeah, it's a tough one for me. But if I was Tottenham Hotspur and the way we do things, I would be having a deep look into Almo, and Almo would probably be the favourite.
The only sticking point I could see is why Spurs potentially wouldn't go for it, because the wages that Olmo's on right now at RB Leipzig is close to 200 grand a week. Okay. So if he would want more wages than that, or like a raise in his wages coming into his next transfer, then that could be a bit of a sticking point. But I would say, like, if we could offer him around 200 grand a week, and he was open to accepting that, I think I would prefer to go for Olmo than Eze. I think I really would. When you're looking at like I said, the fees bring him in. If you're going to bring in Eberechi Eze, how much wages do you think we're going to put him on? 150, 175, something along those lines?
You think around that, wouldn't you? You would think around that. I think the only other thing, Ben, when you mentioned the sticking point, I think the only big sticking point with Almo, in my opinion, is like you said at the beginning, if he has Spain and wanting to go home with his family, as that's where I want to be, I want to go home, that could be a huge stumbling block. Obviously, that would take any other team in Europe out of the equation, no matter what money came. But yeah, I think when you look at it, I think Almo, if my memory serves right, hasn't had a massive injury like Eze has as well, that's kept him out for a few months or anything.
It's not that. I'm not sure about massive injuries, but he has had quite a few injuries in his career. He has.
Niggling ones?
I'm just trying to get his the amount of games he's actually played, because he actually doesn't. He actually suffers from injuries quite badly. Last season, 21 games in the Bundesliga. The season before, 23. The season before, 19. So I think he actually does have a bit of an injury history.
So is that injuries or team selection? Does it actually state that?
I would imagine it's injuries because, he should be one of the first names on the team sheet.
Yeah,
for.
You'd think.
So I'm looking at.
I don't watch a lot of German football, so.
Last season, he missed 16, 17, 18 games through injury for club and country.
There you go.
The season, no, actually more. Actually, a lot more than that. He missed about 29 games for club and country last season alone. Season before, he missed 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20. And the season before, he missed a fair chunk as well. So he does have his injury problems.
So then we're back in the conversation with Neto, aren't we? It's, do you pay 50 million for someone that loses that amount of games? So obviously I wasn't aware that had been an issue in his game. But then that literally is like a Neto punt, isn't it? Obviously, You know what you're getting when he's on the pitch, but how often are you getting him on the pitch?
Yeah, that is obviously a big situation. I knew he had a few niggling injury problems, but I didn't know it was to that extent. And that, as much as I was massively in favour of it before, it does put me off a little bit.
We've both talked ourselves out of it. Let's go back. That question you asked about Eze and Almo, my love for Eze all day long.
The other player I wanted to talk about is Federico Chiesa, because Fabrizio Romano says that Juventus' decision on Federico Chiesa is clear. Plan to sell the Italian winger this summer with a contract due to expire June 2025. Thiago Motta doesn't see Chiesa as a key part of his project. Looking for solutions, Chiesa is expected to be sold for something around 20 to 25 million euros. So for someone of that quality to go for that cheap, I think, again, represents really good value. When you're looking at the wingers that we are going for this summer, Desiree Doué and Pedro Neto potentially, I think Chiesa should also be of coming into the mind of Spurs' thinking. They're looking at the clubs that have been rumoured to be linked with him are clubs like Roma. It is worth noting that he had a big injury a couple of years back, and he hasn't really got back to his full potential consistently. I think in the first few games in the Euros for Italy, he looked good, but never really seemed to recapture that form for the other games for Italy. What would your opinion be on Chiesa?
I am concerned with him. Don't get me wrong, when he is at the top of his game, very, very good player, very tricky, and would definitely suit the kind of style of football Ange wants to play. He's a big concern with me injury-wise, a huge problem. Do you know what? I've seen a lot of people on social media who think there may be another reason for such a low fee. Maybe there's something like, I've seen a lot of people say maybe there's something like the Tonali issues, like the gambling or whatever. Not saying that there is.
He's got a year left in his contract, Brian.
Okay, so that will be a major reason. But that is still, you look at players with a year left could still command big money. And they want him out the door and want him out. I don't know if it's for FFP or for any other reason. I don't get me wrong. I think he's a great player, but again, like the other player we were talking about, Almo, injuries are a concern, aren't they? It seems to be Neto, Almo, and Chiesa are being heavily linked, or we've seen links, and they've all got big injury concerns, haven't they? And we know the style of football Ange wants to play. These injuries going to be a factor in Ange ball?
Chiesa did play 33 games for Juventus last season, so he had a fairly injury-free season. He had a few niggles where he missed 1 or 2 games on the odd occasion, but I think he had a fairly injury-free season. The season before that, he played 21 games. The season before that, 14, and the season before that, 30. So in the 21-22 season, about halfway through it, he'd done his cruciates. And then he came back halfway through the next season. And then since then, he has been having niggling injuries here and there where he's missed 1 or 2 games, but hasn't been a major cause for concern, his injuries.
Well, I will say my number one Italian person to go to, obviously a friend of your channel and mine, Iggy. Iggy wants him badly. And if Iggy says he wants him badly, Iggy knows his Italian football as well as he knows his English football. For me, it is a concern, though. But listen, at that value, do you take that as a punt, isn't it? At 25 million, that is a punt. And is it a punt worth taking? Maybe.
I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, yeah, he might have not got back to his best post-injury, but pre-injury he was, I mean, what a player. What a player he was. You look back at the Euros, the last Euros when they won it. I mean, he was an integral part to that. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. Before Juve took him on permanently, he was on loan there. I thought he was brilliant then. And I think someone like Ange Postecoglou is really a manager that can get him back to his best. Juventus have changed systems and changed styles. Maybe since he was out injured, Allegri's come back in, and maybe it's not a style that absolutely suits him down to a T. But I think maybe the Ange Postecoglou system and methods really could suit him. He might not be that touchline winger, but maybe we haven't seen him in that kind of vein, and maybe he can do that role as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, wherever we look at it, it always depends on the kind of, does he fit the style of football that the manager wants? And we know in recent history that hasn't been the case, and we have bought players that do not suit the manager. He does. If we'd say, if the question was, does it Chiesa suit Ange ball? The answer is undoubtedly yes. Undoubtedly yes. So you never know. Hopefully, if he was to come in, I would echo your sentiments. I think Ange could get the best out of him and rejuvenate him.
Other clubs that have been linked with him, 2 clubs out in Saudi, Al Nassr and Al Ittihad, but apparently he doesn't want to go out to Saudi. He wants to stay in Europe. And Bayern Munich have also been accredited with interest for Chiesa as well. Who would you prefer to bring in, Chiesa or Neto?
So, man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I mean, Neto I rate so goddamn highly. So goddamn highly. He's right up there with Eze for me. He really is that good. But again, you have the huge question. Put it this way. If you could guarantee both would play a huge chunk of the season, I would go Neto all day long. All day long. I think he is a wonderful, wonderful player. So for me, based on if they were to play, let's say, 80% of the season, Neto all day long for me. What about you?
I think I'd agree with you. I think if you could guarantee me both of them are going to stay moderately injury-free for the season and, let's say, miss a maximum of, 7-8 games of the season, then I would go for Neto. I think he's Premier League proven. He does it week in, week out for Wolves. Even when he does come back from injury, he just hits the ground running, doesn't he? And he's just a star, absolute star in that team. But when you're looking at how much football both of them has played, I mean, don't get me wrong, Chiesa's had his injuries, but Neto's injuries are just something else. Like, he has hardly played. He played it. I think he took part in 20 games in the Premier League last season, but before that, I think was less than 15. Before that, I think it was less than 10. So his injury problems really worry me. But if injuries weren't a factor, I would be going for Neto. But you're talking about Neto is going to cost probably double what Chiesa is going to cost. And Chiesa did play 33 games last season in the Juventus shirt. So I think just because of the injury record, I might just about side with Federico Chiesa.
I can get that. It's all ifs, buts, and maybes, really, isn't it? When it comes to two players that have got huge injury issues or had huge injury issues in their past, it's which one do you go for? But like you said, I think the fact that he's, like you said, Premiership proven, English not an issue. I don't know if Chiesa already speaks English. Being settled in the country, all those factors are huge for me. Then you look at Tottenham this year. Would Neto be wanted in the Premier League or Europa League or both, or would they say, right, listen, we need to keep you fit. You are going to be Premier League a majority of the games. Europe, we're going to give you a rest until the latter stages. Put it this way, it's a nice conundrum to be hearing that we're linked with these players. It's just whether we proceed and go for them. But it's a tough call with me. I haven't seen a lot of Chiesa. I haven't seen a lot of him recently anyway. But I obviously have seen a lot of Neto.
And you got to look at it as well with Neto. This season, he's had 2 big hamstring injuries. And once your hamstrings start going like that, it's very hard to stop them, especially in the football that Ange Postecoglou plays and the way we like to play our football, non-stop running, we never stop. And I just feel like if Neto was to come here, those hamstrings are just going to keep popping, aren't they?
Well, you look at it, Mickey van der Ven's had 2, hasn't he? He's had 2 this season, and obviously we were absolutely a different team with or without him. So that's a factor. And then if you bring in another one, and you could potentially have both of them out, that's 2. Let's say if Neto was there, that's 2 huge game time players that could drastically have a detriment if they're both out at the same time. So you've got to look at that option as well. So you may be right in slightly siding with Chiesa.
But I want to know from you guys out there, are these 2 deals for Dani Olmo for £50 million and Federico Chiesa for 20 to 25 million euros? Are they too good to turn down? Should Spurs be going in for them? Are you worried about the injury history of these specific players as well? And let me know who you prefer. Would you prefer Olmo or Eze or Federico Chiesa or Pedro Neto? I'd like to thank Brian Daigle for coming on with me today. We're going to be doing a Tottenham update as well, which actually probably will be out before this video. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Like, subscribe and comment, and as always, come on you Spurs.
Come on you Spurs.